Motzei Shushan Purim, I think. Today is the 16th day of the month of Adar, and we are learning Daf Kuf Tes Vav Amud Beis. Starting from the bottom of Kuf Tes Vav Amud Aleph, 2 lines from the bottom, the Gemara tells us the following. Amar Rabbi Elazar Amar Rav Oshia. Says Rav Elazar in the name of Rav Oshia, Kol Shetibula B'mashke. Anything that you dip into liquid, meaning any vegetables dipped into liquid, tzarich netilas yadayim, you have to do netilas yadayim for that. Now, where does such a din come from? That you have to do netilas yadayim on vegetables. We know you have to do netilas yadayim on bread, but where does it come from that you have to do netilas yadayim on vegetables? So the first thing to note is that hands, in general, are considered to be, if you don't know when the last time they were cleaned was, so they are considered to be a sheni l'tuma, and anything that is a sheni l'tuma could puzzle truma, and that's what we discussed at the beginning of the Masechta and Daf Yudalad when we were speaking about the sugyas of Reb Chananya Skala Ka'anim. And if you, this is the understanding of the Gemara, if your hands, which are a sheni l'tuma, are going to touch liquid, so that liquid could become a shlish l'tuma, and therefore is going to make everything tummy. Meaning, you can't be matame the food, but you can be matame the liquid. Says the Gemara as follows: anything that you're dipping into liquid requires netilas yadayim. Amar Rav Papa says, Shmami, what you learn from this is hay chasa, this lettuce that you are dipping into your charosis, tzarich le'shakay becharosis mishum kappa. You have to dip it into the charosis because of kappa. What exactly is kappa? So kappa, Rashi and the Rashbam point out, is eris. It's a kind of poisonous stuff that comes out of a particular infestation into the lettuce, and that is very dangerous. And you need to dip it into the charosis, which is going to kill it. And that charosis, which is going to kill it, is then going to make the lettuce edible without a sakana. The Tosfos here asks the question, well, hold on a second. Isn't eating bugs the problem? Eating bugs would be also. So the Tosfos here points out that the way that we understand this, according to this there in the Tosfos, is that bugs are very, very uncommon. Meaning this particular kind of bug is very uncommon in the charosis, and therefore you can hold like a rope unless you actually see the bug. You don't have to be concerned that it's there for kashrus purposes. But for sakana purposes, but for life and death questions, this could make you very, very ill. So there, we're not going to follow the majority opinion, which means that you don't need to check it for bugs, but you do need to kill the bugs if they might or might not be there. And therefore, you can follow the rope with regards to the question of Issa v'heter, but you cannot follow the rope when it comes to questions of sakana. Nevertheless, we're going to dip the whole thing into, they're going to dip the whole piece of lettuce into the charosis mishum kappa, and the reason that you're going to do this, says the Gemara, if you think that you don't have to dip the whole thing in, netilas yadayim, why do you have to do netilas yadayim? Haloi naga. If you're not dipping the whole thing in, then you don't need to do netilas yadayim, because you're not going to be touching the liquid, you are only going to be touching the lettuce. Says the Gemara, maybe you could say the reason that you don't have to dip the whole thing in is still the reason that you're dipping it in is because of kappa, because of this this potential sakana, but you don't have to dip the whole thing in because the kappa mericha mais. It's not going to die just from the vinegar that's in the charosis. It's going to die even from the odors of the vinegar and the charosis. It's a very sensitive parasite or worm or whatever this is. It's going to die as a result of the fumes. So you don't have to dip the whole thing in order to deal with sakana purposes. In which case, why do I need netilas yadayim? Says the Gemara, I'll tell you exactly why. Dilma mashkule. Maybe you will dip the whole thing in. Meaning, if you're dipping it in, maybe you're going to end up touching the liquid, and because of that, you will need to wash netilas yadayim. Says the Gemara, Rav Papa says, you should not leave your maror in the charosis. And we have this minhag today that you dip it in and you shake off the maror. Why? Dilma agav chayle de tavlin mevatel el. Maybe because of the sweetness of the spices, it's going to be mevatel the mara. That's interesting. The Rashbam doesn't exactly have this girsa. The Rashbam doesn't have the tavlin as part of the girsa. It seems to be the Rashbam says agav chulye shishunoisnim tapuchin that you put tapuach into it. You put the fruits into it. That's what the sweetness is going to come from. The gears that we have in our Gemara is chalid de tavlin, that there's going to be spices inside of it. That's going to get rid of the bitterness. Apparently, there were different gears of the Gemara, different recipes for charoses. The mevatel el, that's going to get rid of the mara flavor. But in a time mara, and you need it to have the flavor of mara. And if you're going to leave it in the charoses, it's not going to have that flavor. Says the Gemara. Adbari Rav Chisda Rabbana Ukva V'darash Natal Yadav Betibul Rishon Natal Yadav Betibul Sheni. So Rav Chisda brought this din in front of Rav Ukva and said, it seems to be that we have to do the Netilas Yadayim for the first dipping for karpas and for the second dipping, which is mara. You have to do Netilas Yadayim for karpas and for mara. Amur Rabbanan Kamei de Rav Papa. And the Rabbanan said over this din that you need Netilas Yadayim twice. They said this in front of Rav Papa. And he explained to them, no, this is not talking about Leil HaSeder. This is talking about, in general, that if you are having vegetables and you're planning on dipping, or you're not planning on dipping, you end up dipping twice. You have, some celery and carrots that you're dipping into some, Russian dressing or Thousand Island dressing. So there you would have to wash Netilas Yadayim. And then if you're going to have something else, some other vegetables to eat later, you would need to wash Netilas Yadayim again. Because if you're going to say that it's talking about Leil HaSeder, why would I need Netilas Yadayim twice? You've already washed your hands once, and you're sitting at the same table. Why would you need to wash your hands again? Amar lehur of Papa said as follows: adraba. To the contrary, this is in fact what we're saying. The if you think that was only said in general, why do I need two dippings? So what does it mean? This is what it says. This is what we're talking about. That you need Netilas Yadayim twice. It says you've already washed your hands once. He says that this whole conversation is the Bryce already thinks that this is ridiculous, or the Meimer thinks that it's ridiculous. So what's pshat? Amr, they said Kevin the Baile Meimar. He says you have to explain as follows: Kevin the Baile Meimar, I got it to Ve'lela. Since you are saying that I got it, the I got it, meaning the Haggadah Shel Pesach, telling of Sibri says Mitzrayim Ve'halela, and the beginning part of Halal before you get to Maror, Dilma Asuche Asche Ledat V'Naga. Maybe you're gonna end up not knowing where your hands went. And you're going to have Hesach Hadas, and you're going to touch something that is going to make your hands dirty, and that's why you have to wash again. And he says that it is talking about Leil HaSeder, and the reason that we're saying it, so Hachi Itma, this is what we're talking about, is in fact for Leil HaSeder, because there's a long period of time in between. Amar Rabba says, Bala Matzah Yatza. If you swallowed matzah, you are Yotze, meaning you popped it in your mouth, and without chewing or tasting it, you just swallowed it. Bala Mara La Yatza. But if you swallow the mara, you have not fulfilled the obligation of mara, because mara requires the flavor of it. Bala matzah umar, and what happens if you swallowed matzah and mara together, meaning you did like the Hillel sandwich, which we said yesterday, is not supposed to be eaten together because of that concern of Hillel II, that the mitzvah d'Rabbanan is going to be mevatel the flavor of the mitzvah d'Oraisa. But if you did it maybe in the days of the Beis HaMikdash, or even Mizman Hazeh, not according to that shita of Hillel. Yidei matzah yatza, yidei mara la yatza. Then you have fulfilled the mitzvah of matzah, but not the mitzvah of mara. Or you could argue that if you're not tasting either of them, maybe the flavor is not going to be mevatel anything. So the question would arise, even according to the dare, that the flavor of the mara would be mevatel the matzah. Here you're not tasting anything, so there's no bittul. Nevertheless, what do we say in this din? Yidei mara la yatza, because you didn't taste the mara. Karcha and Besiv, what if you wrapped the whole thing? You took matzah and mara, you wrapped it all up together, and then you put it in a sieve, meaning you put it in a piece of like a Rashi says in a leaf from a palm tree. You put it in like some kind of palm leaf that you didn't taste anything, ubala, and then you swallow them. After the matzah nami lo yatsa, you haven't fulfilled the mitzvah matzah at all because you haven't eaten anything. It hasn't even come in contact with your mouth. This has an important nafkamina la'alacha today. Nobody's swallowing matzah and maror in a palm tree leaf, but it has important nafkaminas with regards to medicines. That if you have trephas that are in a capsule, so even if there's something that's treif and you swallow it, you haven't eaten anything treif, you haven't eaten anything because it didn't come in contact with your mouth. And that has important halacha nafkaminas with regards to medication today. Amar of Simi Bar Ashi says, of Simi Bar Ashi, matzah lifnei kol echad ve'echad, you have to put the matzah in front of each and every person. Maror lifnei kol echad ve'echad, you have to put maror in front of each and every person. V'charoses lifnei kol echad ve'echad, and you have to put charoses in front of each and every person. Ve'ein okenes hashulchan ela b'nei misha omer agada, but you only have to pick up and take away the table, the tray table that each person has. You only have to do that for the person that is saying the Haggadah. Everybody else can have their table next to them. The guy, the Bal Haggadah, is going to the Balabais that's saying over the Haggadah. Everybody else is listening. That's called Shemea Ka'ina. They are participating in the reading of the Haggadah. So, but his table is going to be taken away. That's the din. Rav Huna says Kulunami. Lifnei Misha Omer Haggadah, you only have to put the matzah and the maror the charosis in front of the person that says over the Haggadah. Vilchas Rav Huna, and we pass on like Rav Huna, meaning the Seder plate has to be in front of the person that's saying the Haggadah. It doesn't have to be in front of everybody. The Seder plate has to be in front of the person that's saying of the Haggadah, and everybody else will be participating in that. Now, of course, everybody has to have matzah, and everybody has to have maror, and everybody has to have charosis with their maror. But you only have to have it present in front of the person saying the Haggadah. Says the Gemara, why are you taking away the table? Which today we do as taking away the Seder plate. The Rashbam and the Tosfos point out. So Amri Debei Rabbi Yana, they sit in the house of Rabbi Yana, so that the kids are going to look at it and they're going to ask, they're going to say, what are you doing here? This is very strange. And then the Gemara tells the story. Abai have a Yosef come the Rabba. Abai was sitting in front of Rabba. And he saw, and they're taking away the table from in front of him. Amarlo, he said to him, we haven't eaten anything yet. Are you taking the table away? So Amarle Rabba said, shkoyach. You have exempted us from saying manishtana, meaning you've already started asking questions. We don't have to say manishtana anymore. Now, does that mean that you don't have to say manishtana at all? Or no, this is exactly the purpose of it. Is this like a tongue-in-cheek, or is this a halachic statement? That is discussed by the Rishonim and Achronim, we'll see a little bit later. When we see the halachas of manishtana a little bit later on. The next piece of the Gemara, Amar Shmuel, Be'ez Hashem Yisbarach, we are going to continue with tomorrow because it all goes together. The dinim of Lechem Oni, and Be'ez Hashem, looking forward to seeing everybody then. Hope everybody is having a freilichen day, and the simcha of others should continue with the success of our chayalim and the safety and security of our brothers and sisters in Eretz Yisrael. Looking forward, please God, to seeing the Geula Shlema Amitis B'mher B'Ameinu.